One of the most common objections people hear when they're trying to enroll people in their business is, I want to do it, but I don't have the money. This is the one that everyone's like, oh yeah, how do I deal with this one? Well, first of all, remember, people are always looking for reasons why or why not. So many people, when you're doing your business, remember you're not selling so much as you are sorting. Selling versus sorting is a very important concept to get in your brain, because what we want is, we don't just want them to come into our business. We want them to come in our business, sell lots of products, and recruit lots of other people who sell lots of products and or services. So the bottom line is, if we have to tug of war them or close them hardcore to get in the business, then the reality is, do we really even want that person? So I just share with you, when someone is bringing up objections, listen to the tone of their voice. If someone goes, well, I want to do it, but I really can't afford it, that's not the same as, I really want to do it, but I can't afford it. You know what I mean? So if you find that you have someone who you really want in your business, but they're saying they can't afford it, now let's talk about how to overcome that objection. And first of all, let me just share with you that they can afford it. Absolutely, undeniably. We've already talked about, if you raise the value and the value is up here and the money you're asking for the value is down here, that's how a sale is going to make. So once again, immediately start increasing the value of owning a distributorship with your company, of the tax benefits, of some of the things that you may not have mentioned yet. You go ahead and you mention those things. But then a lot of times I'll say, I appreciate what you're saying, that right now you don't have the money. But in my head, I know they can find the money. They may not have the money, but I know they can find the money. You know how I know that? Because about 20 years ago, I was sitting in an opportunity present. I walked into my first presentation like this. Give me a break. It's one of those deals. I've seen these things before. Pfft, I'm going to kill my friend when this is over. Give me a break. Then as it went along, they started talking about the product. I was like, well, that kind of makes sense. And then they started talking about the money, and I was like, wow, this really does make sense. Then there were some testimonials of successful reps, and I'm like, man, I need to do this deal. Then they said, in order to get started, you fill out your paperwork, you pay a little bit of fee. Then to really crank it up, you want to get some inventory. We recommend you start at this level. And that's when I was like, oh my God. They wanted us to start with $5,000 worth of water filters. I didn't even know what a water filter was. $5,000. I had $7 left in my checking account and all maxed out credit cards and no savings account. So I was like, well, I want to do it. I turned to the person who invited me, but it's impossible. So being good at what he did, my friend said, I appreciate where you're at, Mark. He didn't disagree with me. You agree before you disagree. Let me get my sponsor over here to talk to you. And that gentleman came over and goes, Mark, so let me get this straight. You want to do the business. Is that true? You really do want to do the business? I'm like, yeah, I do. I just don't have the $5,000. He goes, well, what would it take for you to get it? Well, it's impossible. And he goes, Mark, impossible is an interesting word. Let me just ask you this question. I mean, now this is way off the subject, but I have a friend of mine who wholesales cars. I don't know what kind of car do you drive now, Mark? I go, well, I got a Buick, and it's kind of used and beat up and all that stuff. He goes, well, that's cool. What's your ideal dream car? Because this guy can get almost anything. And I'm like, well, someday I'd like to get a Corvette. He goes, what color? I'm like, black. He goes, really? Convertible? Yeah, what color would the interior be? Tan. So you want a black Corvette with tan interior, man. Got the top down, the stereo jamming, get maxed out rims and all that kind of stuff. Do you have any idea what that costs, Mark? And I'm like, not really. I've never even had the guts to go and price one. He goes, well, let's call it somewhere between 40 and 50 grand. Let's just say $45,000 to get the way you want. That's probably about right. And I'm like, yeah, that's a little beyond my means right now. Well, Mark, let me ask you a question. What if I told you I could make a phone call right now, get in touch with my buddy? I know it sounds too good to believe, but what if I could get you that exact car, brand new, no joke, for $5 grand? If I could, no joke, but you had to get the money within 48 hours, could you get the $5,000? And I was like, are you for real? I mean, yeah, I could definitely get the $5,000. He goes, well, Mark, I just kind of played a little trick on you. I don't really have a friend who wholesales cars, and you can't really get a Corvette that you want for $5,000. But the reality is, you just admitted that if you wanted something badly enough, you could get the $5,000, didn't you? And let me tell you something, Mark, you obviously didn't understand a presentation completely, because let me tell you something, if you understood it, you could buy a fleet of Corvettes, you could have Mercedes, you could have whatever you want. This is the greatest business in the world. So if you want to let that objection get in your way, that's cool. But you and I both know if you had to get that money, right now, go back to the reality of that Corvette, where would you have gone to get the money? My mom and dad, great. Where do they live? In Newton. Why don't you get in the car right now, Mark, and go see your mom and dad? The worst thing they could say is no. Why don't you go ahead, go visit them, and call me when you know what they say. I got in my car. I drove up to mom and dad's house. I battled it out with them. That's an interesting conversation all to itself. I'll share with you sometime. And long story short, they loaned me the money to do the deal. Now, that was $5,000 going back 20 years ago. With inflation, think about how much money that was. I don't think there's too many networking companies in the world right now where that's what you pretty much are going to invest in inventory or the service or whatever product to get started. Nowadays, it's more like 200, 300, 500, or even less than that. But get the point. I got in the industry because someone closed me and overcame my objection that I didn't have the money, and I used the I word. It's impossible. See, in Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which is one of my favorite books, Robert Kiyosaki clearly states that his rich dad, he wasn't his birth dad, but someone he looked up to as his dad, his rich dad who was super wealthy forbid his family and anyone around him from saying we can't afford it. Wouldn't allow him to say it. However, he taught them how to say, how can we afford it? And you guessed it, his poor dad, his real dad, his birth dad used to always say, we can't afford it, we can't afford it. Think about it. We can't afford it ends the creative process. I give up. How can I afford it actually begins the creative process, folks. Most network companies, we're talking about $150, $300, $500 to get involved and own your own business. Go talk to a CPA and ask them you can own your own business. So you don't have to incorporate. You don't have to go through that stuff. You don't have to have attorneys and lawyers, and you don't have to create the product or service. You don't have to have the computers and the servers and the accountant department and all the stuff that's great about network marketing. All that comes with it. You pay your $20, $30, $50, $100, whatever it is to sign up as a rep, and then whatever the product or service is, I really believe everyone should use the product or service. So if it's a grand total of $300, let's say, let me ask you a question. How many things are you going to spend and waste that $300 on? You'll probably spend $300 on lattes this year. You'll probably spend $300 on cigarettes this year if you're a smoker. You spend $300 on beer. Some of you will spend $300 drinking in one night or in one weekend. You'll spend $300 taking your family to a nice dinner. 300 families going to a show. $300 going to a show. $300 going to a ball game. How many ways does the average American waste $300? You'll see a Time Life infomercial where you can buy the greatest hits of Jerry Lee Lewis and you get another CD every month with another great star, and you'll spend $300 that way. You'll spend $300 on a butt buster or an ab cruncher or whatever the case might be. So people are gonna spend that $300 and they're gonna end up with virtually nothing to show for it. The $300 or $500 or $200 they spend on our business, if you believe in the industry and if you believe in your company like I believe, then we know that when people spend that money, it's the best thing they could possibly do. So I just let them see all the ways they're gonna waste that money, and I simply ask them this. Let me ask you this one last question, Bob. You really want to do this, but you don't have the $300. Let me just ask you this. How much longer do you want to live your life like that? Because you seem like a great guy, and I believe that you deserve the finest things in life. And obviously, if you can't afford $300 for something, the finer things in life, like a bottle of Cristal for $300, or staying in a very nice hotel for $300 a night, or flying first class to Europe for $3,000 or $4,000, those things are obviously out of your reach. Wouldn't you like to be able to do that for you and your family? Wouldn't you like to be able to send your kids to an Ivy League school if you choose to do so? But Bob, you'll never attain those things if you can't figure out a way to find some money to get involved in a business that can create that secondary stream of income. See, right now you've got one stream of income. Right now, most people are the only person responsible for their income. But if you get involved in network marketing, you build a team with 10 people, you now have 11 people responsible for your second source of income. Someday it can be 100, someday it can be 1,000, Someday it can be 5,000. Imagine out of 5,000 people, Bob, somebody's got to be better than you, more driven, more ambitious. What if all 5,000 people just work 1 hour in a day? That's 5,000 man/woman hours in a day. Even if you worked at your other job 24 hours in that day, there's no way you can keep up with the team building concept. J. Paul Getty said, I'd rather make 1% off the efforts of 100 people instead of 100% of my own efforts. Most people will go to their grave being the only person responsible for their efforts. Get involved in network marketing, Bob. It's the best $300 you're ever going to spend. You can't afford not to do it. That gives you several different ways to overcome this objection, but remember, it's all about posturing. Some will, some won't, so what? And if they don't do it, you didn't lose out. They lost out. As a final thought, never be focused on your direct bonus or whatever you're going to get when they put their order in. Never be focused on that. Never be focused on that. Be focused on helping them start their own business. Don't look at what it's in for you. What's in it for you, look at it, what's in it for them. They're starting their own business. And I'll give you one last thought. So many gentlemen, when they go out in the real world in this day and age and they're looking for a young lady's company, they're looking for Miss Right Now. They're maybe not looking for Miss Right. Obviously, some people are looking for Miss Right, but a lot of people are looking for Miss Right Now. If you're looking for Mr. or Miss Right Now as far as your downline, because you want to sign someone up to make that commission, this isn't going to work for you. You want to look for Mr. or Miss Right, and when you get them involved in the business, it's not like you get their order, get rid of them, and go find someone else. When you get them into business, that's when the relationship begins. If you think that way, it's going to make a huge difference. And let me tell you something, if you think that way, you're not going to hear the objection, I don't have the money to get started, very often, because if people know that you're looking out for their best interest, the $300 or $500 or $800 or whatever it costs is an insignificant amount of money to start your own business. People are smart, folks. They understand that being an entrepreneur is the way to go. They understand we call America the land of opportunity, not the land of a secure job with benefits. So be in their best interest. Don't worry about your direct commission. You'll be amazed how this objection will be wiped out of your life forever.